My wife cheated with her boss, and now he's claiming half our $850, $0 house and $300, $0 in savings. Turns out he was secretly bankrolling her affair the entire time and has a hidden stake in our business. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be nothing but a lying, cheating bitch. Honestly, I thought we had a pretty good life. Big house, nice cars, stable jobs, and a kid we both loved. But that all came crashing down faster than I could blink when I found out the truth. And trust me, it was the kind of truth that hits you like a freight train, leaving you dazed and wondering how everything you believed in could be so fake. It all started about 3 months ago. Lisa had been acting weird, more irritable than usual, snapping at me over small things. She'd suddenly cancel plans, say she was busy with work, or tired from long hours. She also started coming home late, sometimes smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, and her phone would be glued to her hand. At first, I shrugged it off, telling myself she was stressed or maybe just tired. But deep down, I knew something was off. One night, I decided to check her phone when she went to the bathroom. I know, it's invasive, but honestly, I was desperate. I wasn't going to snoop forever, but I needed to see if my gut feeling was right. I unlocked her phone, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There were texts, flirty, suggestive, downright explicit, between her and her boss, Mark. They were talking about meeting up, about sex, about how much she needed him. I saw pictures, 2 screenshots of hotel receipts, texts about their secret weekend, and even a few photos that made me want to throw up. I immediately felt a rush of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this after all we'd built? And the worst part, I found out that Mark wasn't just a random guy she was cheating with. Turns out, he'd been secretly bankrolling her affair the entire time. I found emails showing he was investing in her side hustle, and even more shocking, I discovered he had a hidden stake in our family business. A business I built from scratch with my own blood, sweat, and tears. That's when I realized this wasn't just some fling, it was a carefully orchestrated scheme, and I was the fool who got played. I confronted Lisa the next morning. I was furious, trembling with rage, and I told her I knew everything. Her reaction: she looked at me with this smirk like she was amused that I finally caught her. She everything at first, claiming I was paranoid, jealous, or just imagining things. She lied, of course. Said she loved me, that Mark was just a work friend, and that I was overreacting. But I had the messages, I had the proof. There was no denying it. The confrontation was a mess. She called me possessive, paranoid, and said I was crazy for thinking she'd cheat on me after all these years. She told me I was imagining things, that Mark was just helping her with some work projects, and that I was jealous because I was not satisfying her anymore. Yeah, right. She had that bitchy, condescending tone like I was just some insecure idiot. But I knew better. I knew what I saw, and I knew she'd been lying to me the whole time. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. I kept replaying everything I saw, all the lies she'd told, all the times she'd been distant or defensive. I felt betrayed on a level I never thought possible. I'd always believed in honesty, loyalty, and the sanctity of marriage. And now, it felt like I'd been living with a complete stranger, one who was capable of lying, cheating, and secretly screwing over our entire lives for her own selfish reasons. This discovery didn't just hurt, it shattered my entire world. I started questioning everything: the years we spent together, the trust I thought we had, the future I'd envisioned. I was furious at Mark, furious at Lisa, but mostly furious at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I was also starting to realize that her lies weren't just about the affair. They extended into every part of our life, including the money. I'd been so blind, thinking we had this perfect, secure life, but it was built on her deception all along. Now I'm stuck trying to figure out what to do next. Do I walk away? Do I fight for what's mine? Do I even want to stay with someone who could so easily betray me? The house, worth about $850, $0, is in both our names, and she's already throwing around the idea that she deserves half of it because she's contributing. She's also been draining our savings, about $300, $0, claiming it's for emergencies. but I found out she's been funneling some of that into Mark's secret accounts. Turns out, he's been secretly bankrolling her affair and even has a hidden stake in our business, which she's been manipulating to cover her tracks. Honestly, I feel like I've been punched in the gut so many times I don't know how I'm still standing. I want justice, real justice. Not just for the betrayal, but for the way she's been screwing me over financially, emotionally, and morally. I don't know what's worse, her blatant lies or the fact that Mark has been secretly pulling strings behind my back all this time. I'm just trying to keep it together long enough to figure out my next move, but I know one thing. This isn't just a betrayal. It's a complete annihilation of everything I believed in. After I found out everything about Lisa and Mark, my head was spinning. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and honestly, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. I kept replaying the scenes, her texts, her lies, the way she smirked when I confronted her. The biggest shock was learning that Mark wasn't just some random guy she was screwing around with. No, he was secretly bankrolling her entire affair. I stumbled onto emails and bank statements that proved he'd been funneling money into her side hustle, helping her hide the affair from everyone, including me. And it wasn't just some casual thing. Mark had a stake in our business that I'd built from scratch, and she'd been manipulating that entire setup to cover her tracks. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I wanted to be prepared. I sat her down in the living room, quiet, tense, and broken. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, acting like she was the victim. I told her I knew everything, about the affair, about Mark's money, about how they'd been lying to me. Her response? She rolled her eyes, said I was overreacting, and accused me of not trusting her after all these years. She insisted Mark was just a mentor, that she was done with him, and that I was just jealous because I couldn't satisfy her anymore. I lost it. I told her I wasn't some idiot who'd buy her bullshit. I showed her the proof, screenshots of the emails, bank transfers, hotel receipts. Her face went pale for a second, then she snapped back with more lies, more denial. She said Mark was just helping her with her business ideas, that he was just a friend, and that I was crazy to think otherwise. I could see her trying to manipulate me to make me doubt what I knew was real, but I wasn't falling for it, not anymore. The thing that cut the deepest was realizing how much she'd lied, not just about the affair, but about everything. She lied about our finances, about her feelings, about her loyalty. She'd been sneaking around behind my back for months, maybe longer. And all the while, Mark was secretly funding her, helping her cheat, and probably planning to take a cut of our assets. I found out that he had a hidden stake in our business, which she'd been using to funnel money into her secret accounts. That was the biggest betrayal of all. She'd been sneaking money out of our shared savings, almost $300, $0, claiming it was for emergencies. But I now know she was just feeding Mark's greed. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut so many times I couldn't breathe. My mind kept racing, trying to process everything. How could Lisa do this? How could she betray me, our family, everything we built? I felt a mixture of rage, sadness, and deep disappointment. I couldn't believe I married someone so manipulative, so dishonest. I wondered how many other lies she'd told me over the years. I felt betrayed on every level, emotionally, financially, morally. I started thinking about the house, the money, the business. She was already claiming she deserved half of everything, and honestly, I wasn't surprised. She'd been so good at hiding her true intentions. I had no doubt she'd try to take everything I'd worked for. The house was worth about $850, $0, and she was demanding her share, citing her contributions, which frankly were mostly just her presence and her lies. The savings, which I thought were for our future, she'd already drained, funneling money into Mark's accounts. I realized I wasn't just dealing with a cheating wife. I was dealing with someone who'd been secretly scheming behind my back to take everything I owned. At that moment, I knew I had to act. I couldn't let her continue to lie and manipulate. I started planning my next steps, consulting a lawyer, gathering all the proof I had, and figuring out how to protect what's mine. The betrayal was so deep that I knew I'd never look at her the same way again. I felt like I'd been a fool for trusting her all these years, But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it, not without fighting back. The most shocking part, Mark's involvement. I found out he'd been secretly bankrolling her affair for months, maybe longer, and had a hidden stake in our business. That meant he was not just a lover but a partner in crime. And now he was claiming half our house and a big chunk of our savings. That's when I realized this was bigger than just a cheating wife. This was a full-blown conspiracy. I felt humiliated, furious, and betrayed all at once. My trust was shattered, and I was left wondering how I'd ever put the pieces back together. After I gathered all the evidence and sat with the shock for a few days, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Lisa kept acting like she was the victim, throwing around her usual manipulative lies, telling me she loved me, that Mark was just helping her with her dreams, and that I was blowing things out of proportion. Her tone was bitchy, condescending, like she was annoyed I was even questioning her. Honestly, it made me sick to listen to her spin her web of lies while I was silently crumbling inside. I decided I needed to get serious about protecting what's mine, our house, our savings, the business I'd built from nothing. I started talking to a lawyer, one who specialized in divorce and asset protection. The lawyer told me I had a strong case, especially since I had proof of her affair, her financial manipulations, and Mark's hidden stake. The more I dug, the more I realized how deep this rabbit hole went. Mark had been secretly funding her side hustle, which was actually a front for their affair, and he had a hidden ownership in our business, something I never suspected. All this was buried under layers of lies and deception. I also found out that Lisa had been funneling some of our savings, about $300, $0, into Mark's accounts, claiming it was for business investments or emergencies. But I now know she was just feeding his greed. That money was supposed to be for our future, for our kids' college fund, for our retirement. Instead, she was secretly giving it away to her lover, who was secretly planning to claim a stake in everything I'd worked for. The betrayal hit me like a brick wall. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut every time I thought about how she'd been lying, cheating, and stealing from us all along. I knew I had to act fast. I contacted a forensic accountant to trace the money trail, and I started documenting every financial transaction I could find. Meanwhile, I told Lisa I was filing for divorce. She threw a fit, of course, calling me paranoid, jealous, and crazy. She said I was overreacting, that I was, accusing her of something she didn't do, and that I was trying to ruin her. But I didn't care. I had enough evidence to prove her lies and her financial schemes. I was done being played. Things escalated quickly. Lisa's attitude turned even more bitchy and entitled. She started talking about what she deserves, claiming her contributions entitled her to half the house and a big chunk of our savings, despite the fact she'd been secretly draining those accounts without my knowledge. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I was abusive, and that Mark was just a mentor helping her grow her side business. I knew she was lying, but hearing her spin her bullshit made me angrier. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, Mark started making demands too. He's claiming half the house, saying he invested in our marriage and our business, and that he's entitled to a stake. The thing is, I found emails where he was secretly orchestrating the whole thing, funding her affair, helping her manipulate the business, and planning to take his cut. That's when I realized Mark wasn't just her lover, he was a full-on co-conspirator. He was secretly bankrolling her and had a hidden stake in our company. That's why he's claiming half the house and the savings, because he's been involved in everything from the start. I've never been so angry in my life. I built that house, that business, that life. And now, some two-faced bastard and my wife are trying to steal it all from me. I feel betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I started talking to a divorce lawyer about how to protect my assets, how to prevent Lisa from taking half of everything she didn't rightfully earn, and how to deal with Mark's claims. I also hired a private investigator to dig into Mark's finances and his involvement in the whole scheme. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that I was dealing with a carefully coordinated conspiracy. Honestly, I don't even recognize the woman I married anymore. Lisa used to be bitchy, sure, but she was also sweet, caring, and loyal. Now she's manipulative, selfish, and downright cruel. She's trying to paint herself as the victim, but I see through her lies. I see the greed, the deception, and the way she's been using me all along. I've lost my trust, my peace, and probably my marriage, but I refuse to let her take everything I've worked for without a fight. I've started gathering everything, proof, bank statements, emails, witness statements, to make sure I get what's fair. The worst part, Mark's demands. He's claiming half the house, half the savings, and a stake in the business. He's even hinted at wanting custody of my kid, which was just the icing on the cake. I know I need to prepare for a long fight. I've realized I can't trust Lisa anymore. Not with my heart, not with my money, not with my future. I've got a lot to do, and honestly, I don't know how I'll come out of this, but I do know one thing. I won't go down without a fight. The more I dug into everything, the more I realized how deep the betrayal went. I started talking to a lawyer who specialized in divorce, property disputes, and asset protection. It was time to get serious. The lawyer told me I had a solid case, especially with all the proof I'd collected, screenshots of her texts, the bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals, the emails revealing Mark's involvement. Still, it was clear this was going to be a fight, and Lisa wasn't about to give up her share without a battle. Meanwhile, Lisa kept playing her manipulative games. She'd storm into the house, bitchy and entitled, claiming she deserves half, that she helped build this, and that I was jealous and paranoid. She'd cry, yell, and accuse me of trying to ruin her life, all while trying to spin her story as the victim. But I saw through her lies. I knew she'd been scheming behind my back for months, maybe longer. She'd been draining our savings, funneling money into Mark's accounts, and even secretly working on her side business, using our shared assets as her personal piggy bank. I also discovered that Mark, the supposed mentor, was more like a silent partner in her side hustle. Turns out, he'd been secretly funding her, helping her expand her operation, and even pushing her to push me out of the picture. I found emails where Mark was urging her to get rid of him and take what's yours, implying they'd planned this all along. And Mark's claim on the house, turns out he had a hidden stake in our business which he'd been manipulating to increase his share. I was furious. This wasn't just about some affair, it was a conspiracy to steal everything I'd built. I started documenting everything I could, taking screenshots, copying emails, printing bank statements. I hired a forensic accountant to trace the money trail, and that was eye-opening. I found out that Lisa had been funneling money into Mark's accounts under the guise of business expenses or emergencies, but really she was just feeding his greed. That $300, $0 in savings, almost gone, spent on her secret life, her side hustle, and Mark's secret investments. I felt like I'd been living in a nightmare. How could someone I trusted so much do this to me? How could she betray me, our family, and everything we stood for? As the days went on, I realized I needed to take control of the situation. I prepared to file for divorce, but I also wanted to protect my assets. I spoke with an attorney about how to freeze or shield the house and savings. We discussed the possibility of a legal claim that would prevent Lisa from claiming her half, especially considering her financial misconduct. I knew Mark would try to claim half as well, citing his investment, but I had proof that he was involved in the scheme from the beginning, and I wasn't going to let him walk away with my house or my money. The emotional toll was heavy. I kept feeling angry, betrayed, and humiliated. I saw how Lisa played the victim, crying and saying she deserved happiness, that I'd failed her, and that Mark was just helping her grow. That bitchy tone, that condescending attitude, she didn't even try to hide her disdain. She'd already moved her things out, but she still came around, demanding her rights, insisting she was entitled to half because she'd sacrificed for this marriage. Sorry, but that's bullshit. She's been secretly screwing her boss, draining our money, and manipulating our assets. She's not a victim, she's the villain. Mark, of course, wasn't backing down either. He started making demands: half the house, half the savings, a stake in the business, and even custody of my kid, claiming he was invested in the family's future. I couldn't believe the audacity. I had proof that Mark had been secretly funding her, helping her cheat and manipulating the business from behind the scenes. I was ready to fight him in court, to expose his involvement and stop him from stealing what's rightfully mine. I had no intention of letting these two thieves walk away with everything I'd built. At this point, I realized I was in a war, not just a legal battle, but a battle for my dignity, my future, and my sanity. I was determined to fight for what's mine, for the house, the business, and my reputation. I started gathering witnesses, consulting financial experts, and preparing for what I knew would be a long, messy fight. I also knew I'd have to be strategic, making sure Lisa's lies wouldn't stand, that Mark's hidden stake was exposed, and that I could protect myself and my son from the fallout. This whole thing has been a nightmare, but I refuse to let them win. I'll fight for every dollar, every inch of that house, and for my child's future. It's not just about money anymore. It's about justice, respect, and reclaiming what's rightfully mine. I never thought I'd be in this situation, but now I see that trust is fragile, and sometimes the people closest to you will stab you in the back the hardest. I just hope I come out of this stronger, and that someday I'll be able to look at my kid and tell him I fought for us. The legal battle is turning into a war, and I've never felt more exhausted or more pissed off in my life. I've spent countless nights poring over documents, talking to my lawyer, and trying to piece together how Lisa and Mark managed to pull this off for so long without me noticing. The more I uncover, the clearer it becomes that Mark was not just her lover but her partner in crime, bankrolling her secret side business, secretly owning a stake in our company, and scheming to take half of everything I built. And Lisa, she's been lying through her teeth, acting like the victim while she's been orchestrating this entire treachery. I've learned that she drained about $300, $0 from our savings, claiming it was for emergencies, but in reality, she was funneling that money into Mark's accounts and her own secret investments. I found bank statements and wire transfers that show her moving money just days before she started her affair. It's like she was planning this whole thing in advance, building a nest egg for herself and Mark while pretending to be the loyal wife. That realization hit me hard. I wasn't just betrayed, I was played like a fool. I've also discovered that Mark's stake in our business isn't just a small investment. It's a controlling interest, hidden under layers of shell companies and offshore accounts. I hired a forensic accountant, and what they uncovered is mind-blowing. Mark has been secretly siphoning money from our company, making deals behind my back, and positioning himself to claim a big piece of everything. It's no wonder he's demanding half the house and the savings. He's been secretly planning to take it all along. Meanwhile, Lisa has been using every trick to delay the process. She's claiming she deserves half because she contributed to the marriage, even though her contributions were mostly lies and betrayal. She's throwing around her rights, demanding a fair split and insisting she's the victim here. But I see right through her. She's just trying to manipulate the situation to get her hands on what she thinks she's entitled to. She's bitchy, condescending, and manipulative, acting like she's the one hurt, when in fact she's the one who caused all this pain. My lawyer advised me to prepare for a long fight. We're filing for an injunction to freeze the house and savings, preventing Lisa from liquidating anything further. I've also started compiling all the evidence of her financial misconduct, photos, emails, bank statements, to build a strong case. I know Mark will try to claim his stake, but I have proof of his involvement from the start. I've even hired a private investigator to look into Mark's offshore accounts, just to make sure there are no more surprises lurking out there. The emotional toll is brutal. I feel anger, betrayal, and a deep sense of loss. I trusted Lisa for years, believed in her, and now I realize she was just using me as a pawn in her scheme. She's not the woman I married. She's a manipulative, selfish, bitchy liar who's been secretly screwing her boss and stealing from us. The worst part: I still love her, or at least I did, but that love is fading fast, replaced by a bitter resolve to get justice. I also worry about my kid. Lisa is still trying to play the victim, saying she deserves custody because she's the mother. But I have evidence that she's been neglecting her role, spending more time with Mark than with our child, and manipulating the situation to get what she wants. I want what's best for my kid, but I also want to make sure Mark doesn't get his greedy hands on him. I've started working with a custody evaluator, and I'm preparing to fight for full custody if necessary, because I refuse to let Mark or Lisa manipulate my child emotionally or financially. This whole nightmare has taught me a lot about trust, deception, and greed. I've learned that people are capable of anything when they're desperate or greedy enough. I've also learned that I can't blindly trust anyone, not even the person I once thought was mine. I've become more cautious, more guarded, and more determined to protect what's mine. I'm not going down without a fight. I've got lawyers, financial experts, and evidence on my side. And I swear, I will do everything in my power to keep my house, my business, and my family intact, because I refuse to let these two thieves take everything I've worked so hard for. The worst part, feel like I've lost a huge chunk of my life's trust and rebuilding that is going to take years. But I know I have to move forward for my kids' sake and for myself. I've started thinking about what my future looks like, whether I stay and rebuild or start fresh somewhere new. Honestly, I'm tired of the lying, the betrayal, and the constant fight. But I also know I can't let them win. Not like this. Not without a fight. The legal process has been a nightmare, long, draining, and emotionally exhausting. Every day feels like a new battle, whether it's fighting off her latest manipulative tactics or trying to keep my composure while the court cases drag on. But I've learned one thing through all this. You have to fight for what's yours, even when it feels like the world is against you. Lisa's bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations, they've all shown me what real betrayal looks like. And Mark, that snake has been secretly siphoning off money, hiding assets, and planning to take everything I've built. In the end, I managed to get a court order to freeze the house and the savings account, protecting what little I still have. I presented all the evidence I gathered, her lies, the bank transfers, the emails, the offshore account details. The court saw through her manipulations, and I was awarded temporary custody of my kid, with Lisa's access limited until the full custody hearing. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. I felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief because I knew I was finally fighting back. Anger because I'd lost so much trust and time. The final blow came when the court ruled that Mark's claim to the house was invalid. My lawyer proved that Mark had been involved in the conspiracy from the start, secretly funding Lisa's affair and manipulating our business behind my back. The court ordered him to pay back the stolen funds and declared him ineligible to claim any stake in the property or the company. It was a huge win, because it meant I could keep what I built, free from his greedy claws. Looking back, I realize how much I've changed. I used to believe in honesty, loyalty, and the sanctity of marriage. But now I see that people can be downright evil when greed and betrayal take over. Lisa was manipulative, bitchy, and selfish, using her beauty, her lies, and her charm to get what she wanted. Mark was just as bad, secretly planning to take half of everything I'd worked for. I've learned that trusting blindly can be a huge mistake, and that sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect yourself. I also learned a lot about myself. I'm stronger than I thought. I'm more cautious now, more guarded, but also more aware of the dangers out there. I've started rebuilding my life, focusing on my kid, my health, and my future. I've moved to a smaller place, cut ties with everyone who was involved in this mess, and started a new chapter. The house, the business, all the money, those are mine now, and I'll make sure they stay that way. Most importantly, I've come to accept that not everyone is worth your trust. That betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you to be smarter, more resilient. I don't regret standing up for myself, even if it meant losing a lot along the way. It's better to fight than to be a passive victim. I hope my story serves as a warning. Trust has to be earned and greed can turn even the closest people into enemies. To anyone out there going through something similar, don't give up. Gather your proof, get legal help, and fight for what's right. The road is tough, but in the end, justice can prevail. I may have lost my wife, my partner, and part of my peace, but I gained clarity, strength, and a renewed sense of what really matters. Life goes on, and I'm finally ready to rebuild, stronger, wiser, and more cautious than ever.